Hello, out there, weirdos, and welcome to the Weird Wide Web podcast, brought to you by weirdwideweb.org, a place for, you guessed it, all things weird. If you haven't been to the website, what are you doing? Get over there. We've always got new blogs coming out. If you're into metal music, we've got a new blog I just posted recently with some bands that you might want to check out. Um, Another one coming from one of my article writers, William Beauvais. He's going to write about his love of Iron Maiden growing up.
I'm here with my co-host today, Kasey Hill. She hasn't been on here since episode 1. How have you been doing, Kasey?
I have been recovering from a fall where I fell on my steps and I fractured my spine. And I was on all kinds of medication. So, there was no way I could be coherent on here.
Not to mention, it seems like terrible injuries for a mother always happen at the onset of summer. When you're going to have all extra stuff to do. Everyone thinks that summer's a vacation, but it ain't.
Oh, it's not. It's not at all. No.
Not for mamas.
No. We get gray hair over this summer, and that's why we have to dye it.
Oh, don't talk about dyeing hair. I've been neglecting doing that. I need to get on that. So how's your spine, though? Are you better?
I still have some mild to moderate pain from here to there, but I am ambulatory. That was the main thing. Like, I walked into the emergency room when it happened, so they didn't think anything was wrong with me, so they kind of treated me differently. And then they're like, oh my god, she did fracture her spine. And then they're like catering to me, and I'm like, I'm leaving in 5 minutes and now you're catering to me.
Wow. They took the x-ray and they're like, this is actually kind of a big deal. We should have addressed this.
Yes, pretty much.
I haven't been up to much other than reading all the writing contest entries and just never starting my novel. I swear, I don't know if I'm an over plotter or if everyone else spends so much time in their head with these characters before they even begin. But I pretty much have a book written in my head and a ton of notes, and I keep not starting it. Why?
I am like, you're talking to the habitual plotter. Like, oh, I've got this great idea. I'm going to write a story about it. Let me make this cover. And then it never gets written.
Yeah, the ideas are easy to come by, aren't they?
Yes, they
But
are.
this one, I'm okay. This is gonna reveal how much of a nerd I really am. But I'm so connected with one of the characters, whom I haven't even written yet, that I actually sat there the other day and was crying. I was like, I understand her so much. But I could have taken that moment to now begin the novel, but that hasn't happened yet. It's okay. It's coming. It's
Oh,
gonna happen.
oh, trust me, I do the same thing. Like I'll be driving down the road and like poetry lines will come to me and I'm like, this is a great poem. When I get home, I'm going to write this down. No, it never happens.
See, when I get good ideas, I text myself.
I can't text and drive.
Oh my god, you're so right. You're so right. It's just okay, I'm always just trying to get anybody to blend that with that song, like, when I want it to be, "When I get ideas, I text myself." What was that song? Because every time I get an idea and text myself, this song goes in my head, and I think it was something about I touched myself, but
It is.
I never do look this song up. Do you which one is it?
When I think about you, I touch myself. Yeah, I don't know who the
Yes.
singer is, but my sister
Well,
used to listen to that song.
that's enough to go on, and I'm gonna pull it up today and dance to it because when I get ideas, I text myself, you know? Well, I had no idea what to talk about today, and you said you fell down a rabbit hole with the Mandela Effect, which, I kind of, when it was trending, I may have looked into it some and I know a little bit about it, but I don't think I went full down the rabbit hole with that one. I think it just kind of always makes me think of the different Twilight Zone episodes that are kind of like that, but
It is a big rabbit hole. Like on the surface, it's like people are like it's glitches in the matrix, type deal. I'm actually in a Mandela Effect group, and I had made a comment about someone had made a post. I don't remember their post, but I was like, I mean, this has been evident with like, sex and the city now instead of sex in the city. And then people were in there and they're like, it's always been sex in the city. And I'm like, why are you even in here if you're going to argue with me over stuff? Like, honestly, you're from this
Because it's a
universe.
Facebook group,
I'm
it
like, you're
must be toxic.
you're from this universe. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, you don't even know the real thing about the Mandela effect. And that's the larger rabbit hole. The Mandela effect. In 2012, um, the Mayan calendar ended. As we all know, nothing quote unquote happened. Our world was supposed to destroy, it was supposed to end or something like that. One of the theories for Mandela effect is that it actually did end in our universe molded with a parallel universe. And that is where the Mandela comes in, because in a parallel universe it's not going to be exactly the same. There's going to be slight differences, and those slight differences are evident with um, Bernstein bears versus Bernstein bears.
Let me
Um,
interject. You like me. You really like me. That apparently
yes,
never happened.
yes, and it is the common deeper, instead of on the grazing the top like a lot of those people in the group do, is we molded with the parallel universe, and it has to do with the firing and stopping of CERN, which is that machine over in Europe that discovered the God particle. When they discovered the God particle and everything like that, every time they fire it, something changes in our universe because it is warping, or it's warping all the universes. And that is the deeper rabbit hole.
It sounds more plausible to me than some theology I've heard laid out to me, I'm going to be honest.
they have
But I
they have a movie called Cloverfield Project, and it has to do with the same thing. And they're in space when it happens. So like
it always starts in space in Twilight Zone. There's like
the
two different episodes that I feel like are spot on for the Mandela effect, and it's always an astronaut coming back from space.
well, they experience it in space too. They can see the real world and they can see the parallel universe. And then when they come back, it's like the Mist, basically Stephen King's The Mist. There's all these
Hmm.
monsters because they opened up a wormhole by doing it. And it starts in Huntsville, Alabama, which is where the real NASA is, as opposed to can you hear me, Houston?
And the word, just hearing the word wormhole always just sends a chill up my spine because some of the most terrifying horror actually gets kind of mistaken for sci-fi just because it will be set in space, but like Event Horizon, stuff like that, going through a wormhole is not a good idea. Opening one's not a good idea. All you're going to get out of it is either like elder gods or like time warp or monsters. I mean,
Yes, and you're actually really correct on that front. Science fiction horror is not widely recognized as horror, and I really do not like that. I worked for a magazine, Gothic Bite, and they had a strict rule that it could not cross over into science fiction at all. Even if it was sci-fi horror, what we wrote about could not cross over into science fiction horror because it's not recognized really as horror. It's just science fiction with the horror element.
yeah, I do not understand that at all, but I've seen it for sure. Um, I was actually really happy with the Weird Wide Web writing contest that I was so open to the genres. We got fantasy, sci-fi, some more literary leaning where it almost defies you to give it a genre. And of course, we got horror, but you can see the horror in a story, no matter the genre, if it touches on something that is truly disturbing to touch on, you know. So kind of
Exactly.
limiting that could be their loss, really. Just depends.
Oh, I agree. I really do. I think anything that has horror in it should be considered horror. I've even went to the lengths of, and I'm probably really people thumbing me down as a horror author when I say this is technically the Twilight movies are an umbrella of horror. Even though they're paranormal
Mhm.
romance, I believe paranormal romance that has to deal with like werewolves and has to deal with vampires and stuff like that. It's set in the point of view of the human is the only reason why it's not dark fantasy. Dark fantasy vampires like Anne Rice, they are horror. It's considered horror, and it's because it's from the point of view of the monster itself instead of the point of view of the human. So, I mean, if we're going to get technical here, if Anne Rice's books are considered horror books under the genre dark fantasy, then paranormal romance ones are too.
And I'm going to interject because I have quietly sat by for so many years because I think a lot of the problem is the internet hive mind and the trending ideas that happen that almost prevent people from experiencing something. And I think a lot of people dismissed Twilight without even watching it because it was the big joke. Oh, they glitter and they're, he loves a high school girl. Who cares about it? But I'm going to tell you what, if you put the vampires from Twilight side by side with almost any other vampire I can think of in modern horror film, they're going to absolutely dominate. This guy can rip a tree out of the ground by its trunks and toss it across the forest. So, I mean, maybe he can glitter, but he's also going to kick your ass.
And the glittering thing is because their skin is as hard as diamonds.
And it's honestly because I believe it came to Stephanie Meyer in a dream, and some of my best stories came to me in dreams, so I'm going to defend her on that one too.
I
Maybe if he
honestly
glitters, go with it, girl.
I honestly think that she was part of the same community that Anne Rice was part of because there is a community that is the real vampires of quote unquote NOLA. And this community is widespread across the United States with their different chapters and different houses and different covens and everything like that. And there are people who really do think that they're vampires.
Right.
And they'll do saying feeding like with a consensual donor. Some of them are psychic vampires, some of them are elemental vampires, some of them like there's a different and wide range of what they are, but there's the community meets up every year at balls in NOLA. One of them was the Anne Rice ball. And Anne Rice was friends with these people. I have pictures of people that I knew in this community with Anne Rice, and Anne Rice
Oh, I'm sure.
would write characters and everything. And the way she wrote her characters, some of it is historical, based off of mythology and everything, but a lot of it is based off of these people.
I couldn't believe how deep Queen of the Damned went because it's like she created this whole history of her own. And you kind of thought, well, she's going to graze on it, but it just kept going deeper and deeper. Where, what were we talking about? Oh, Stephanie Meyer. Yes, she's earned her stripes and she belongs in that community as much as anyone else. So I'll tell you what, we are Team Glittery Vampire at Weird Wide Web.
Yes, and I've always been hated on it for it because most of the people who have read the Twilight books read those books when they were adults. I
And
read it when I was a teenager.
right, and that make it, oh my gosh. Well, do you know what vampire books I was reading when I was a teenager though? If anybody wants to question my horror origins just because I'm vocal in my support of Twilight, just know I was reading Poppy Z. Bright when I was about 14, so I'm just as warped as the rest of you. I just happen to see the value in the Twilight vampires, you know?
Exactly. And like you've said, like she's earned her stripes to be right there with Anne Rice. I mean, I read Anne Rice in high school too. Like I was reading all of her books in high school, and then I stumbled upon Twilight.
Speaking of vampires, I don't want to forget to mention that we are going to actually have a special, longer episode coming up that is all about vampires. We're putting together a whole themed vampire soiree, I guess. Something to look forward to for all you vampire freaks out there.
Oh, it sounds like fun. I might join y'all.
You have vampire stuff?
uh, kind of, yeah, sort of.
Whenever I was really applying myself toward the writing about 10 years ago, it was a big deal at the time to avoid the common tropes and the cliches. It would say in all capitals in the sub guidelines, no werewolves, no vampires, no zombies. So I really got discouraged from writing vampires for a long time. And I really don't have that much vampire material, but on a personal level, I've always loved them. I do. I love a good vampire story.
I actually have a short story up on Kindle Unlimited that was part of the Vamps versus Wolves anthologies that were being put out by JEA. And once the rights reverted back to me and the books came down and everything, I popped my story up on KU, and it gets more reads than any of my stuff that I have on there. It's sad.
Yeah, it probably touches on that algorithm. Maybe I'll just start hashtagging vampire in everything I write, regardless. Hey, that's dirty pool, but somebody would have to notice first. So I would at least have to be popular enough for someone to even notice my misuse of the hashtags. So even then, I'd be doing better than I am now. So,
Right, right.
I might give it a try.
Hashtag vampires.
But from where I sit, it looks like you're always doing something over there. I mean, there's always a new book cover in my news feed or a new anthology that your press is putting together. So, seems like you stay pretty busy.
I do stay busy, and actually this is like my first year back to writing and publishing. I've been sick for a few years now, and then I finally got a diagnosis that explained everything for me. And it was my food allergies, the alpha gal that I have, that was basically making my life miserable.
That's kind of the path I've been on. All of a sudden, at the beginning of this year, after feeling really down in the dumps for a long time, I just started putting out short story after short story. At any given time, I have a dozen out there, so the rejections are starting to sting a little bit less, so that's good. Um, I actually have a really, really exciting thing coming up that you know about that I can't say anything about. But so if anybody out there is getting rejection after rejection, like if you feel like all you're getting is rejections as a writer, that could turn around at any given point because I was getting a bunch in a row and then I got a bunch of acceptances in a row. It's just something changes in the universe and shifts, and then everyone appreciates you for a minute. I don't know. So keep on with it if you're feeling discouraged. I'll tell you that much.
One person's rejection is another person's gold.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
One press might be like, this isn't for us, and then one press is going to be like, this is exactly for us. Thank you for coming here because this is wonderful.
And sometimes it's just the math. I, I got almost 160 stories for the writing contest, and I could only pick four, which we're still working on picking the final four, but um, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
So, and I tried to cheer myself up recently. I was waiting around for a response from a press I really wanted to get with, and it was a no. But when you do the math of how many submissions that they reported that they got, it's like, I'm not a special snowflake. Everyone else is out there getting told no to. So pull your big girl pants back up and you get back out there.
Yeah,
But
I mean, it's pretty much how. I mean, it's the flip side of what you're doing for your contest. I mean, you had 160 people, so there's going to be someone in your exact shoes.
Yeah, and then, with the whole thing of starting out fresh, how you and I are kind of having a rebirth this year, everything everything I'm doing with Weird Wide Web is brand new. And so I did feel sort of bad with the writing competition because at first I said 1,000 to 3,000 words. And there was just a lot of authors coming to me saying, I think my best story is just over 3,000 words. Is there any give on that? So I raised it to 4K a couple weeks after submission started, which means the people who had submitted in those first couple weeks may have had a disadvantage by picking a story that was under 3K when I ended up raising it later. And then it wasn't listed in the submission guidelines, but I ended up allowing 2 stories per author. For the authors that came to me and asked, they just couldn't decide which was their best story and they just wanted to send 2. So, what I'm going to do to make that right is I'm going to have a lot more detailed submission guidelines next time around. We are going to have a microfiction contest coming up. It's going to be 600 words or less. And if that terrifies anybody, it can be done. I have a few stories that are 600 words or less, and I fit a little plot in there, but you don't even really have to have a plot in microfiction. You just have to write it well. And I'm not sure what the theme will be, but stay tuned. We're working out all those details because I definitely want to do another writing contest soon. And had kind of discussed with you, Kasey, possibly doing a photography contest, and you said that you're interested in photography. So
Yes, I would absolutely love to see a photography contest and everything on there. Like even like art contests and stuff like that. I believe it's a really good way for people to come to the website and be able to browse, They're
yeah, and
like,
I'd like
"Oh,
to get something interactive, almost where people could maybe vote in a poll on some things.
yes, I agree with that."
But sometimes that can be a mess because it does turn into a popularity contest. I used to see that with a lot of the writing polls because I am not I'm not the kind of person who's going to go into somebody's inbox usually and say, "Hey, vote for me in this." And so the people that were doing that probably stood a better chance than me. And I always kind of felt like, well, I wish there was just a panel of judges. So I'm not going to do that with every contest where it's the public judging it. But like you said, when you get people involved, it gets them, they come to the website, everyone kind of has a more of a community and more of a say in what's going on. So maybe with one of the contests we'll have everyone else judge on it and pick the winners.
That sounds like a good idea. And
So with the photography, I mean, would you want to judge or enter or like what do you want to do?
um I could do both.
Oh no, you can't. You gotta pick.
I can judge. I
And the winner
definitely could.
is surprise, surprise, Kasey Hill.
Speaking on like the whole popularity contest of public voting and everything. Everyone is usually aware of the Predators and Editors contest at the end of the year every year. And you get the award for it. And at Predators and Editors is like a kind of like a prestigious website. They're the ones that where you go for to see if a publishing house is an acceptable publishing house or if it's a vanity publishing house and stuff like that. So when I entered the contest a few years ago, I had no idea that people would be voting on mine, and they're like, get people to vote. And then all I did literally was just post on Facebook, and I'm like, can y'all come vote for my book? And my book won the award, but it literally was a popularity contest because most of the people who voted on my book had not read my book. So there's
Yeah,
that.
I've won, sadly, I don't want to say this because it sounds like I'm talking bad about predators and editors, and I'm not. Like you said, it's a very good resource, the website itself. But I have won a couple of those in the past, and I couldn't tell you what they were because I think I didn't store them in my brain as an accomplishment because to me, a popularity contest isn't really an accomplishment. Like to me, one sentence from an editor that I've admired for years, they'll just say one sentence in an email and I'll keep that in my head for the next 40 years if I'm lucky enough to get them. But so it's all about perspective, and no, I'm not talking anything bad about that competition, because while that was all happening, a decade ago, to me it was exciting, and I actually networked a lot and discovered a lot of authors thanks to it. But yeah,
Yes, there is an upside to it. Not to mention, like, people who go to these contests to vote, they have a whole list of people in the same genre that they can look up and buy their book.
right. And we have to have those resources and the networking stuff out there. We have to have something besides Facebook and X, because sometimes I can't even.
Yeah, I get it. I'm the worst at social media promotion too. Like, I'm one of the most horrible authors that are out there. I'm like, at the beginning of May, I got a request from a personal assistant of an author friend of mine, and she was like, "Well, we're inviting you to his newsletter." And I'm like, "Okay, yay!" And she's like, "I need this, 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 and this." I'm like, "Okay, let me get it together, and I'll send it to you." A few days later, "Hey, do you got that stuff?" "Oh my gosh, I forgot. I forgot." "Okay, okay, let me get it together, and I'll get it to you today." A few days later.
Because oh, girl, this is gonna sound like I'm a prima donna, but I need an agent. Don't we all? Because it's
Yes.
so time consuming to even get yourself out there, and even just write down to the little minimal aspects, like, did I remember to interact with everybody on this comment thread? Because I've been busy writing all day and working on the website and judging writing contest submissions, but I also don't want people to think that they don't matter to me for interacting with this creative drive of mine that means everything to me. So right down to managing the interactions and trying to get yourself out there and book yourself interviews, which I haven't done in a few years. It's time consuming, and it's like, what if we spent all that time writing? Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Oh, it'd be very, very wonderful. But hey, I've written this week. I'm pretty sure I've got one short story off for an anthology. Earlier this week, I believe I finished another short story. So I've gotten two short stories done. So I'm doing
Right
very
on.
well.
That's what it's all about. But see, my problem is I'm the short story queen, and I need to finish. I need to start this novel, because what's happening is I'm turning my 2016 novella, Ashes of Another Life, I'm turning that into a novel, but that's not really so much a writing experience, because originally I already had uh, I'm going to say it backwards, a prologue and an epilogue that made it longer, and I'm just adding another chapter in the middle to kind of bring it up to novel length. And so I'll have that novel on the market. But as far as the one that's been in my head, taken up, living there rent free for all these weeks, I really need to start that, because I must have hundreds of short stories, and I'm starting to um, I'm starting to feel inadequate, Casey.
Hey, you can take those short stories and put them all into a book and have a short story collection, and there
I
you go.
do that all the time. I have three short story collections. I have a poetry book. I have too much short stuff.
Like, okay, so a lot of my stuff has always been young adult. Like, my Guardians of Light series is a young adult paranormal romance Christian fantasy type thing. And the rules of writing for young adult have changed over the years. Like, back when we were kids, like, R.L. Stein's books were like 15,000 words.
Yeah.
That's all. And like now,
I've seen this happening, and I'm really rude for interrupting, but I've wondered about if that's why my daughters, who are now 21 and 19, they would bring home these big old books, and I felt like they weren't finishing them, and but they had a real interest in the genre. Like, they liked, I think her name is Mary Hand Downing or something like that, but they've always liked the horror leaning type stuff, just like their mama. But they would bring home these big old books, and I'd be thinking, well, didn't it used to be shorter for a reason? Because kids want to give attention to a book for about a week and throw it aside, They don't want to commit to a...
It's adult readers, though. Adult readers are now into the young adult books.
Oh, okay.
And they're wanting longer stuff. So authors are writing longer, and they're writing longer, and they're writing longer. And like young adult novels used to be 40,000 words, and now people are expecting 75,000 words and 80,000 words. And I'm like, people who will read some of my shorter books in the series are like, well, this wasn't very long. And I'm like, it's not supposed to be long. I know my first one was 75,000, but I mean, this is technically the standard for young adult books now. And like you said, my kids will not finish books. They bring home these books, they start them, and they never finish them, and it drives me insane.
And if you cut it in half, or if you cut it by made it a fourth of as long as it is, they would, because they picked that book up and they wanted to read that book when they picked it out.
Exactly. So like, as I'm sitting here writing, I'm debating, and I'm like, does it need to be longer? Is it fine at the length that it is? And I'm like, I have to choose between the audience that I currently have, which is mainly, a lot of adults reading it, or I have to choose for the younger people and everything. And I'm like, it's supposed to be for them, but the adults are taking over the genre, because when you go into young adult, you don't have the erotica, you don't have the graphicness, you don't have all the other elements of adult writing, and they really like that because they don't want to read that in adults.
And I think that's why a lot of them just stick with the YA books, because with today's market, they don't know what to expect. You could get invested in a book, and then there's just something that, I hate to use the word trigger, because everyone's like, well, you don't need a trigger warning, it's horror. But, some people do. Some people have been through a lot of shit. I'm going to say it. I don't know if I can cuss on this podcast, but it's mine. Some people have been through a lot of shit. So that's why they're sticking to the YA books. But as you're saying, now we can see it morphing the entire genre. And is it morphing it away from our youth reading it?
I believe it is. And if y'all hear anything in the background, it is my children home from summer school, and I apologize.
Yeah, I was going to lead into that in the beginning, just so you didn't have to feel awkward, like with the whole "a mama's job never ends," because, it doesn't, and it don't bother me. I mean, gosh, I'm glad that I'm glad my youngest is 13, because there's a lot less jarring moments where suddenly I feel like somebody's leg is broken out of the blue, and it's just because somebody snapped somebody's popsicle. Like, what? And how did you eat your popsicle so fast without getting a brain freeze? You demonic child. Anyway. But I've gotten a lot of good story ideas from my kids. I kid you not. I'll stop cussing. I kid you not. I have a whole short story collection called The Tooth Collector, and Other Tales. But it's because my daughter had a moment where she was really questioning the tooth fairy, because she wasn't so sure that she wanted somebody coming into her bedroom in the middle of the night and lifting up her pillow.
Oh, that's great, because I tortured my children with the tooth fairy, and I let them watch Darkness Falls, and I told them, like, if you open your eyes, that's what's going to happen.
Such a good movie, though. It really is.
It is, yes. Oh. And like you, I have a whole collection of short stories called Tales from the Crib, and my dedication is to my children, who make my life creepy.
Yes. And they give us a reason to trick or treat, and that's good.
Yes, it is. I get to act like a teenager for one whole night.
But I'm kind of coming into the whole, I'm really digging the whole they're grown up and independent vibe, where, well, this summer, my son has decided he just wants to stay up till 5 in the morning and sleep till 2 in the afternoon. And to be honest, now that he's 13, I've just been letting him, because I can sit here and do this podcast right now, and maybe I'll even start a novel after this. I don't know. The possibilities are endless. When they're sleeping. When they wake up, they want stuff all the time.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes. Like in my room every 5 minutes, and I'm like, Why can't you just give me a list when you first walk in, and then I'll just go down that list?
But yeah, I also have some dedications at the beginning of my books for my kiddos because, we're proud of them even though they are weird, weird, weird. That's because we like weirdos at Weird Wide Web. So
Exactly. Yes.
I told my son, I said, I need to get you on the podcast and we could call it Gage's Weird Facts because boy, he's got them. He's got, did you know this? Did you know that? I learn a lot. But some of it, I'm just straight up like, that's not true. And you need to get
Right.
off of TikTok. Like, it's not true. And I'm thinking about now deleting TikTok from your phone and letting you never have it back again.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Same. My son, same. And I'm like, dude, no. And he'll argue with me. I'm like, who's the older person here? I'm older than Google.
When I was in community college, we didn't even use Google as the search engine that we used. It was like Yahoo or Bing
Yahoo.
or
Yes. Yes.
I mean, I still use Yahoo for mail, but I can't imagine typing something into the search bar. How primitive.
I don't even think I used Google until I had kids. And I'm being serious about that because I was all the way even through college. And this is like 2009 era. I used Yahoo. And it was always Yahoo searches. And it wasn't until after I had kids that I'm like, hey, Google's a thing.
I've mainly existed on the dark web myself. I'm kidding. I probably
I was
shouldn't
going
even
to say,
say that because then I'll get flagged or something like
I was going to say,
SWAT
could you give
team.
me directions there?
You travel back to 1996 and you type in rotten.com and then you go to the creepiest guy in the comments section and ask for his email address. And then the virus he sends you with the email he sends you takes you to the dark web.
Oh my God. That's great.
I still didn't learn much about the Mandela Effect despite your homework. And even when it was trending, a few years ago, I never fell down that rabbit hole because I think what happens is that it gets me watching Twilight Zone. I swear there's this one episode, and I think it's even called The Parallel. And the astronaut returns from space, and the first thing he notices is there's a white picket fence in his front yard that was never there. And of course, he asks his wife about it, and she's acting like the fence was always there. And now that we've been talking about this, I need to go back and watch it because I really don't remember how it ends. But it seems like, if his life was good enough, I mean, who cares if someone built a picket fence, while you're in space or I don't know. Well, there's another one that's more serious for real because there's another astronaut one. And that one was based on a Richard Matheson story. And the astronaut comes back from space and he remembers 3 of them going into space, but only 2 of them came back. And everyone is telling him, no, it was only you and this other guy. There was never this third guy you're speaking of. And then
Okay.
eventually, you remember that one?
Yeah, and there's also an actual movie, like, it's called The Forgotten, and it's got Julianne Moore in it, and it's about her kid and a bunch of other kids that died in a bus accident. And then people stop forgetting the bus accident, and then it's like, you never had a kid, and then, oh, you never had a husband, and then, like, yeah, that's a total awesome one that you should watch if you haven't watched it.
I did, but it was so long ago because it was new at the time that I'll rewatch it. But I love Julianne Moore. I think she's just so beautiful. And she has a darkness when she is Carrie's mom in the Carrie remake. I think she really nailed that because she's good at being. See, I think I've decided this episode that we can cuss because I'm going to say it. She's good at being batshit crazy. That Julianne Moore. I
Oh,
thought she did a
yeah.
really good job. I like the original actress who played Carrie's mom in the '70s one. I don't know
Sissy
her name,
Spacek.
unfortunately.
Sissy, no,
Oh,
not
no,
Sissy
that
Spacek.
was
That was
Carrie.
Carrie.
I don't know who the mom was. I could Google it right now just to give her respect that she deserves. But I liked her, but I thought Julianne Moore did really good in the remake too. Let's see, Carrie original. I'm going to find out who played Carrie's mom in the original so we can know her name. Piper Laurie.
There we
And
go.
she very well could be a woman of horror whom I should respect. I don't know. I'm gonna look into that. But I know she was pretty creepy as that mom with her dirty pillows. Huh.
Oh gosh.
Anyway, I'm trying to think. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on in this episode or anything? Because I kind of went into it willy nilly. I haven't really had to plan this episode because I'm just coming out of reading all those stories and I'm recovering, frankly.
Let me tell you how this episode goes is how every day goes for me when I'm talking to someone. You know that meme of the guy that played in It's Sunny in Philadelphia where he's standing at the board full of pictures and papers, and he's looking insane, talking about something and explaining it with the board. That is me. That is my
Yes, and I
daily
adore that
life.
show. Yes. That is like that's probably my favorite comedy show. I've seen every episode, I believe, unless there's some brand new ones. I love it. It's just they're always all worked up about something, I'll tell you. I don't know. He's all worked up. So cracks me up. I guess we can wrap it up, our little chat today, until next time you're on, which, I don't plan things enough for other people. Everyone would maybe like a more set schedule of when the episodes release, or would like to know who's going to be on what episode when, but frankly, I don't know. I'm real busy over here not writing a novel, okay? Listen, I've got the whole thing written in my head, and that was a lot of work. It was a lot of work. So I'm going to wrap up today's episode with you, Kasey, and we will figure out when you're going to be on again because I love having you on.
Yay, I can't wait to be back.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you go for the day, and we'll see you next time. And thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you for having me.